What if I told you one simple mod could boost your diesel's power, improve fuel economy, and save you thousands in repairs, but could also get you hit with massive fines or even make your truck illegal on the road? That's the reality of a DPF delete. And today, we're exposing the hidden truth they don't want you to know. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly why diesel owners are so divided on this mod, and whether it's actually worth it for you. First, let's quickly break down what the DPF actually does. DPF stands for Diesel Particulate Filter. Its job is simple. It traps soot and harmful particles from your exhaust before they enter the air. Over time, that soot builds up, and your truck has to burn it off through a process called regeneration. Sounds good in theory, but in real-world driving, this system can become one of the most frustrating and expensive parts of owning a diesel. Now here's where things get interesting. A DPF delete basically removes that filter from your exhaust system completely. That can be done in two main ways. Either the filter is physically removed and replaced with a straight pipe, or the inside of the filter is gutted while keeping the outer housing so it still looks stock. Either way, the result is the same. Your exhaust is no longer being filtered. So why do people even consider doing this? Let's talk about the biggest reason: power. The DPF creates restriction in your exhaust. It builds back pressure, which limits how efficiently your engine can breathe. Once that restriction is gone, exhaust flows more freely, and your engine can perform the way it was meant to. That usually means noticeable power gains, stronger acceleration, quicker throttle response, and overall better performance. But there's a catch. To actually unlock those gains, your truck needs a proper ECU tune after the delete. Without it, the engine won't adapt correctly, and you could end up with worse performance instead of better. Now let's talk about fuel economy. Because of that same restriction, the DPF can also reduce efficiency. When you remove it, many drivers report a gain of around 5 to 10% in fuel mileage. That might not sound huge, but over time, it adds up, especially if you're driving long distances or using your truck for work. So at this point, it sounds like a win, right? More power, better mileage, and fewer restrictions. But don't get too excited yet, because this is where the story takes a turn. Because once you start looking past the performance gains, you'll realize why this modification is so controversial. Let's talk about one of the biggest issues diesel owners face: the DPF getting clogged. Over time, soot builds up inside the filter, and if your driving habits don't allow proper regeneration, like short trips or city driving, that soot doesn't burn off the way it should. When that happens, your truck can start losing power, running rough, or even going into limp mode to protect itself. And this is where many people decide enough is enough. Because fixing a clogged or failed DPF isn't cheap. In many cases, replacing it can cost thousands of dollars. And that's not even counting additional issues that can come along with it. So when you remove the DPF completely, all of those problems disappear. No more clogged filters, no more forced regenerations, no more expensive replacements. From a reliability standpoint, that sounds like a huge win. Your engine can run more freely, and you're eliminating one of the most failure-prone components in modern diesel systems. But here's the part most people don't think about. When you remove the DPF, you're also removing a key emissions control system. That means your truck will start producing more pollutants. In many cases, you'll even notice visible black smoke, especially under hard acceleration. Some people like that look, others don't. But regardless of opinion, the reality is your vehicle is no longer operating the way it was designed to in terms of emissions. And this can lead to real problems. Depending on where you live in the United States, your truck may fail emissions testing immediately. And if inspections are strict in your area, that alone can make your vehicle unusable on public roads. It doesn't stop there. Without proper tuning, your ECU won't recognize that the DPF is gone. That can lead to warning lights, error codes, and poor engine behavior. That's why a proper ECU tune isn't optional, it's required. But tuning adds another layer of complexity and cost. And if it's not done correctly, it can create more problems than it solves. You might also notice your exhaust becoming louder, rougher, and in some cases, smokier than expected. For some drivers, that's a bonus. For others, it becomes a daily annoyance. So now you're starting to see the full picture. Yes, there are real benefits, but there are also real trade-offs. And we're not even at the biggest risk yet. Because the biggest thing most people overlook is legality. In the United States, removing or tampering with emissions equipment like the DPF is illegal for on-road vehicles. That's not a gray area. It's federal law, and the penalties can be serious. We're talking about heavy fines, failed inspections, and in some cases, your vehicle being considered not road legal at all. Now sure, some people still choose to do it, But this is where you need to understand the risk you're taking. Because once that DPF is gone, you're stepping outside the rules. And whether that matters or not depends entirely on your situation, your location, and how strictly regulations are enforced where you live. Now let's quickly talk about how this is actually done. There are typically 3 approaches. The first is gutting the filter, removing the internal material while keeping the outer shell so it still looks factory. The second is a full delete, removing the entire system and replacing it with a straight pipe for maximum exhaust flow. And the third is software-based, where the ECU is programmed to stop monitoring the DPF system entirely. But here's the important part. No matter which method you choose, the ECU must be properly tuned. Without that, you're almost guaranteed to run into issues like warning lights, reduced performance, or even long-term damage. Now let's talk about cost. The hardware itself isn't usually that expensive. In many cases, it's just pipes or simple components. But the real cost comes from tuning. A proper ECU tune can range anywhere from a few hundred to several $1,000s depending on your truck and who's doing the work. And if it's done wrong, you could end up damaging your ECU, which is an expensive mistake you definitely don't want. So before you even think about going down this route, it's worth considering alternatives. Sometimes a professional DPF cleaning can solve clogging issues for a fraction of the cost. Changing your driving habits, like longer highway drives or higher RPMs, can also help the system regenerate properly and avoid buildup in the first place. So here's the truth. A DPF delete isn't simply good or bad. It's a calculated risk. For some people it makes sense. For others, it can turn into a costly mistake. And at the end of the day, the decision comes down to one thing. Are you willing to trade legality and emissions compliance for performance, simplicity, and potential savings? Because once you make that choice, there's no going back.